Hello, I'm Lucy Gray. We start with the news that the Wagner Group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin has left Belarus and is back in Russia. That's according to the Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. Mr. Lukashenko says Mr. Prigozhin is in St Petersburg. Mr. Prigozhin had led Wagner's short-lived mutiny in Russia. Mr. Lukashenko had, in his words, offered to let him bed down in Belarus for a while. On June the 27th, he confirmed that the mercenary group leader had arrived in the country as part of a deal to end the rebellion. In a news conference, Mr. Lukashenko also said that he planned to discuss Mr. Prigozhin's activities with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. And he said he had been assured that the Russian president will not, in his words, wipe out the Wagner Group leader. Mr. Prigozhin was last seen in public when he left Rostov-on-Don, a city in southern Russia. And there have been speculation about whether he was sticking to the terms of the deal. He has not been pictured in Belarus, and his personal jet has flown several times between Belarus and Russia in the past 2 weeks. Well, let's go live now to our correspondent Sarah Rainsford. She's in the town of Białystok on the Poland-Belarus border. And this is all quite strange, isn't it? But I suppose nothing to do with this mercenary leader is usual, I suppose. But what do you make of this news?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alexander Lukashenko really further muddying the waters in terms of what we know or don't know about Yevgeny Prigozhin. Certainly, let's say what he has said. You know, Alexander Lukashenko was speaking to a small group of journalists, including foreign media, in Minsk today. And as he put it, Yevgeny Prigozhin is not on the territory of Belarus. Now, this is in direct contradiction to what Alexander Lukashenko himself had said around 10 days ago, when he had said that Mr. Prigozhin was there and they did offer to let him stay for a while if he wanted. But in fact, on that same day, we had tracked Yevgeny Prigozhin's private jet then flying back late that night into Russia. And we'd also seen it in the days that followed, mainly heading between Moscow and St Petersburg, although its radar was often switched off. So a lot of questions have always remained about exactly where Mr. Prigozhin was. We heard from him on Monday in a short audio statement. Then he thanked his supporters. He said their support was needed more than ever, but he gave no information himself about where he was, what his plans were, what was going on with his fighters. Now, the Belarusian leader said today, again, seeming to confirm that those fighters would be welcome in Belarus and that they could use some military facilities there if they wanted to. But he said that no deal had been done yet. He said that the Wagner fighters were currently still at their bases. Now, I believe that he's referring to their bases in Ukraine, where, of course, they had been involved very heavily in the fighting. So still lots of questions, and still extraordinary to think that Yevgeny Prigozhin, as far as we know, is a free man and still moving around freely inside Russia after he led a really dramatic mutiny there that was, of course, a huge challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Well, and yeah, those words, I think, from the Belarusian president saying Prigozhin is absolutely free, really underline that, don't they? And I just see a quote coming in, a reported quote from the Kremlin saying that they are not following the Wagner chief's movements. I mean, it's very undermining, isn't it, as you say, that somebody who launches a mutiny can just a few weeks later be totally free to travel around the country as he pleases.
It is bizarre, and yet at the same time we're seeing leaks inside Russia of photographs from Yevgeny Prigozhin's mansion there, and those photographs clearly appear to have been leaked in order to embarrass the Wagner leader at the same time. So pictures of his very luxurious housing there, but also of his multiple disguises, lots of wigs that apparently he used to wear to disguise himself, lots of quite comic-looking photographs, which appear, as I say, to be aimed at undermining him. And yet at the same time, you know, hearing from the Belarusian leader talking about Wagner fighters in pretty respectful and almost glowing terms, saying that amongst Wagner fighters' ranks there are dozens of heroes of Russia, so people with state awards, state medals for their fighting in Ukraine, and saying that, you know, their fighting experience is unrivaled. He said if only the whole Russian army were to fight like Wagner. So I think there's a lot of politics going on here. You know, Alexander Lukashenko getting a bit of dig in at Russia. Of course, he's the man who says he struck the deal that saved Vladimir Putin ultimately from that mutiny led by the Wagner Group. So deep politics at work here, but also deep mystery about what exactly the facts are on the ground.
Yeah, well, thank you for talking through it all for us. Thank you, Sarah Rainsford, there on the Poland-Belarus border.